So, two little pieces of gaming news that caught my eye over the last kind of 48 hours. The first of which is about Anthem, the second which is about The Division. Anthem was kind of released. It's kind of a looter shooter game, but you're in these things called javelins. You kind of jump around, you fly around. Kind of had very kind of generic weapons to a degree, but there were kind of like specials, superpowers, and kind of the elements of classes in the MMO kind of stuff. And had an interesting story, and it had this interesting kind of lore, and it was pretty to kind of fly around in, right? And due to things like long loading screens and kind of there's quest about halfway through the game that kind of like time gated the storyline, push people out into the open world, which is kind of a little bit lackluster, right? And so, consequently, for Electronic Arts, who produced the game through this, BioWare Studio, we're kind of like, we're going to pull back on their planned post-launch content in terms of turning it into a Destiny Division-style looter shooter live service game. But at the same time, there was this core combat loop and this interesting story, a few interesting characters, score's very good. Enough to make people go, like, I could become invested in this place again in the future, right? And so they released, kind of the big post-release content was kind of like, so it was kind of maybe like a trial or like a rainy kind of thing. It was called Cataclysm, essentially. There would be like, there's different areas, and then you have a little puzzle piece, and you have to kind of solve and kind of work together and stuff. And it was kind of cool, and I had good rewards, but matchmaking, there's didn't have microphones, hard to kind of like work together. Some of the mechanics were more confusing, and whilst it kind of moved the story forward, it had like a cutscene and stuff in it. It didn't fundamentally change the direction that the game was going in, and so it was the last kind of piece of content before this kind of this small team within BioWare, about 30 people, were tasked with, well, how can we change little things here and there? Can we build upon the systems that are there and the stuff that people have reacted positively towards, and how can we potentially rebuild the game, right? And apparently in the next few days there's going to be a meeting where that team is going to kind of meet with the management of BioWare and the kind of teams at Electronic Arts, and essentially ask to triple their budget, so they can increase to team of hovering somewhere around 100 people, and implement these changes to the user interface and kind of the gameplay loop, and try to see whether or not the thing that they've spent the last year and a half kind of going, what about this? Wouldn't this be cool? Wouldn't this be cool? Getting that to the point where it's like, that's not just cool to us, it's cool to a audience of consumers, right? And so, they're going to make the decision. I think that they should continue with Anthem. One of the things that annoyed me about the javelins is that you'll overcharge yourself very quickly, so you can't fly around crazily, which kind of frustrated me a little bit. But like, those are the kind of things that you could change, and you can kind of add a little bit more reactivity to the open world and stuff. Make it a shorter or a more smooth transition between the open world and the world hub. And those, and all of a sudden you can really start, let's start piecing stuff on top of this, such that somebody could come along and go, look, I played that original game, this is not that game, this is different. And it's a third intellectual property for BioWare as a studio to have, next to kind of Dragon Age, Mass Effect. Mass Effect Andromeda was kind of, that had diminishing returns and stuff, and so, this is it's the ability to be able to actually, potentially go off and make a Dragon Age game that's well received, and B, have your previously negatively received game Anthem, have that be this thing that's like, okay, well now we actually have three properties within that studio which are kind of available for us to iterate on, even with other studios within Electronic Arts, and to kind of, long down the line, but something that can have legs and value to the shareholders and stuff, right? And so that's, it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see where it goes. Some of the artwork is online and it looks very cool, and so it's not necessarily not going to go anywhere. The other thing was that the Division, Ubisoft, had their third quarter earnings call, had to report with obviously European Stock Exchange and stuff, and they said in the earnings call, there's nothing in the report that they issued, which is maybe not a good thing. So they're talking about in that has a list of releases, which includes expansions and stuff through to the end of the quarter. There isn't an expansion for the Division on that. It also talks about how there's these increases in revenue from people buying old Ubisoft games in the back catalogue and replaying them, and that things like Assassin's Creed, a lot of people going back and playing Odyssey and Origins, and within them, there's obviously the utility microtransactions, but then there's also skins, and then there's also this, that, the other thing, and so from people either A, buying the game, or B, buying the game at like a high price, or B, buying the game at a sales price, and then kind of increasing their kind of return to Ubi by buying microtransactions and stuff. Like the Division wasn't in that list. They're talking about obviously other games, which is unfortunate. But in the actual earnings call itself, which isn't public, but it's been reported that during that they were speaking about the content being planned for the Division for 2021 and 2022. Now, if they were making a Division 3, they would have more content planned out than that, you would think. Unless, of course, the Division 3 is coming out quite quickly. You would expect the life cycle of that game to be at least 3 years out, right? In terms of, you have the release, you have the first year, which is kind of, substantive DLC, an expansion, what have you, and then you go into the more seasonal kind of, we'll do a last pass on the game before we move on in terms of mechanics and optimization stations, etc. But also kind of adding events, and you can kind of like have those, return, pretty much without anybody really overseeing the game into perpetuity, which kind of keeps a level of value in terms of that replayability for the company, for Ubisoft. Right. And so that makes me think that it's probably going to be an expansion for the Division 2. And the what, that's my guess. It's my hot take. Probably wrong. Come plain in the comments if this is in the past. Far in your past. But yeah, I think that it's more likely that it'll be a Warlords of New York style expansion. It's just we take you off to a different server, which is what they've done with some of the episodic content that they do with the raids, the summons, etc. It's like, here's this new play, a bunch of new levels, this, that, the other thing. I think that would probably be more likely, and then you add a year of seasonal content onto that, which is what they've done with seasons 1 through 4, in terms of like, go back, replay some of the base game, replay some of Warlords of New York. There's going to be events in that, there's going to be leagues, there's going to be all of these other activities to be able to keep you playing. And yeah, it would make more sense to me that, you know, it took them a year from the release of the Division 2 to release the New York expansion. You know, you see like these 25%, you know, more decreases in productivity as a consequence of Corona. You go, well, then that's going to increase the development time. So I'd probably say second half of this year, my guess would be that there'd be a substantive expansion. Hopefully, talking with the clan last night, with more raids, with a new raid. Because the raid is what I think it really does separate the Division from other live service games, in terms of it has this content that you have to work towards, and once you've worked towards it, you have this real kind of social activity that, you know, is it's like a team sport. It's fun and it's good. I think it keeps people coming back, and I think that's the reason why Ubi have decided to put another 2 years of money into the massive team. And the Star Wars game, which is going to be fucking amazing. They're also going to be using the Snowdrop engine, which essentially means they made 2 Division games, both of which are very good, with these teams working with those systems. And now they get to do Star Wars, where everybody knows each other, everybody, they're good at what they do, and they can play in the Star Wars sandbox. It's going to be fucking great. It's going to be terrific. It's going to be so good. And it's going to be similar to that 30 people with Anthem. There's going to be people within that kind of organizational infrastructure, people overseeing the Division IP to keep kicking the ball down the road and keep us all entertained, which is cool. But anyways, those are the 2 stories of the day. If you liked this, give it a like, say hi, and yeah, friggin'